Welcome to Cool Explorations. I am your host, Tony Peters. Today we're going to be speaking to Andrew Williams, who is a brain cancer survivor, and he's going to tell us his testimony, what his cancer experience and battle was like, and give some advice as to what it's like to go through insurmountable health issues and how you can get through that and how God can really work through these to create a miracle, and not just a miracle in healing, but a miracle in your own heart. And Matthew 7:13 to 14 says, "Enter by the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the way is easy that leads to destruction, and those who enter by it are many. For the gate is narrow and the way is hard that leads to life, and those who find it are few." I hope that you enjoy part one of this conversation. Welcome to Cool Explorations. Today we do have Andrew Williams with us. He's a brain cancer survivor, and we're going to talk all about that experience. I'm looking forward to it. We've got lots of biblical stuff to talk about in there. Matthew 7:13 to 14, we did read in the intro. We'll touch base on that again during his testimony. Why don't you start off by telling us a little about yourself and what you currently do?
Sure, Tony. Thank you for having me on. So a little bit about myself is I've actually lived all over the world. My dad was in the military, and so I've lived in 5 different countries growing up. And I guess one of the most memorable places was Iceland and Bahrain. Bahrain is in the Middle East. And the reason I bring that up is because that started molding me to be the man I am today. I lived in Bahrain with my mom and dad during the times of the Desert Storm War, so the Gulf War over there. And yeah, just growing up in that society, in that culture, I lived in a home where our neighbor, they were Arabic, and their son was my best friend. And the thing is, we got along, and literally you look in the sky, you see missiles, you just see like all these crazy things. And this boy didn't speak English, I didn't speak Arabic, but he became my best friend, and we kind of grew up through the years I was there. And so that started ingraining in me that I learned to look at people as not based on, like, oh, can we, because like, does language matter? Or like, beliefs? It's like, no, it's like connection as a human being. And, I saw him as, I didn't see him as, oh, he's like, he's the enemy or anything, because, we're at war.
Yeah.
But no, it's just, he's a little boy. I'm a little boy. We're playing, and I go to his house. He comes to mine, and we have dinner with our families. And yeah. And yeah, so that's where it started. And um, I look at just the things I experienced there. When you're like 5 years old and you see missiles, and you see your dad comes in combat gear and he puts a gas mask, he shoves you in a closet, he's like, "Don't move," and then I'm like, okay, I don't really know what's happening. Yeah, that just kind of started guiding me and starting to understand things on a deeper level. But I was never bitter, and actually I was never scared. I was very open, and I was just like, okay, this is how things are. And honestly, it wasn't until I got to America, after moving around all that. My dad finished his time there, and we came back to the United States. And it's going to sound strange, but when I first got to the United States, it's the first time I experienced racism, and I was so confused when it happened. And I had already went to school in the U.S. for a little while, and I had gone to college. And when I was my first day in college, I made a friend, and my friend was actually from he was from Africa. He was an actual, like, he was born there, and then he moved to America and went to school, and he was my best friend throughout college. But the first day of college, him and I went to, I don't know if I want to use the name of the restaurant, but we went to this restaurant, and he walked in, and the cashier looked at me, and he goes, "What are you doing here, Mr. Miyagi? This isn't a place for you." And my friend, who's from Africa, he grabbed my shoulder and he pushed me out of the way, and he's like, "What'd you just say to my friend?" And then I was shocked. I was like, "Excuse me?" And then,
Yeah, same
yeah,
reaction I would have. Yeah.
I know. I was like, and then I just lived all over the world, just like, what is going on? I'm used to seeing people that look different and all these, different languages. And then I'm in America, where I was born in the US before we went overseas. So I was like, what? And I experienced it so much throughout college. I went to a university in Mississippi called the University of Southern Mississippi. And I looked at the I guess the pie chart of, I guess, the different type of ethnicities within that school. It literally was 49% white, about like 51% black. And then like there was not even anything for like, any Asians or anything like that. They didn't even consider international students or anything that part of their background. And so throughout college, I would get stopped and all the time and be like, "Excuse me, do you know how to speak English?" And I was like, I'm on a US university campus, and you're asking me these questions. I was so confused for a while, but it brought me to reality. Like this is how kind of narrow-minded a lot of people are, and they
Yeah.
live in these little pockets where they don't know anything outside of it. And it's so sad. And I mean, like I said, I feel very actually privileged to see that at a young age what I went through because it didn't make me prejudiced. It made me feel bad for people. It's like there's so much out there. You don't realize what's happening outside of your bubble. And so I just really wanted to make friends with these people. And so I eventually did. And by the time I graduated college, um, it's most people knew me, and it was just like I just bounced around to different groups. I was in band. I played, trumpet and
Oh,
all
my
stuff.
son plays trumpet.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
I ended up teaching too. I became a music teacher for a bit too, and I taught at the university. I taught like, all this stuff. And yeah, it just really, everything connected. And um yeah, I look at it like, wow. But anyway, so past that college career, I moved over to where I am now. I taught music for a little bit. And then I got into pharmaceuticals, worked at pharmacies. I learned some really um deep secrets on the truth of like medicine and stuff, from many doctors and pharmacists and stuff, that once again, it's just building up my youth and learning
Mhm.
all these things. And eventually, I came here to California on my own. I bought a one-way ticket. I said, bye, parents. It's time to go. And once again, let's explore a new territory that I'm not familiar with. And I'm going to go by myself with no connections, pretty much no money, and I'll find a way. And so I got moved to California, and I've been here for a while now. Learned a lot, but well, I got into the entertainment industry when I got here. So I didn't use my degree. I didn't continue pharmaceuticals. I came out here and I got into entertainment. I got scouted when I was pretty young, to get into the whole thing, the whole gamut of all, to become a musician, playing trumpet. Got into runway modeling, fitness modeling, did commercials and all that, and did that for many years. And then I got to a point where it didn't matter about how much I did or how much, I got paid for a job or whatever attention. Something always felt wrong. Like it felt very selfish. And I started seeing the people around me. I was so secure in myself and what I believed in, but everyone around me didn't. It was all about vanity. And it started to eat away at me through the years. And I finally, reached a place where I'm like, I don't like this, but I don't know where to go anymore because this is all I know living out here. I guess right before I got sick, um, I had to figure things out. And then so I was on that transition journey. Um, I started noticing I don't really feel good, like physically, something's going on. And then after that, I would just I tried to sit there and like, oh, maybe I need to exercise more, maybe I need to make some shifts in my diet. And well, you start to realize that that's not helping. And then the people that I was connected with, they're just like, oh, you're stressing out and blah, blah, blah. Saw numerous doctors and all these things. And I guess that leads me to, that leads me also to where my two things happened. My faith really reached a crossroad. And also, not only that, uh, the most life-changing event occurred in this time too, or well, it led up to a life-changing event that has really just made me pivot my entire life, which I'm actually, I'm really glad it happened, to be honest.
Yeah, a couple things I pull definitely from what you're talking about there, and I want to touch on racism because I think racism is despicable. It really irks
Hmm.
me. I've had people, colleagues that I've worked with in the past, I won't say where at, but who
Hmm.
have used different slang to talk about people of Arabic descent. And
Hmm.
and it really irked me. And I was like, is that really something you should be saying? Is what I've said to them.
Hmm.
And they're just like, oh, it's just what that, it's just what they're called. And I'm like, not really. And some of my closest friends, actually, I have a really good friend that used to work for me. I used to be a manager, and he's East Indian, and he and I became really good friends over the time, and people always assume just because you're not from the country or you don't look like you come from the country, you're not white, that you don't necessarily know how to speak English.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, so many of these people that come over here actually know English better
Hmm.
than your average Canadian or American. I'm
Yeah.
very good at English. Like I speak it very well because I that was what I loved. I'm an author. I published books. Like that's what I loved growing up was
Hmm.
the English language. But assuming someone doesn't speak it, I'm just like so many of them could make you look really stupid because they know the English language a lot better than you do. Because
Hmm.
that so many of them have to study it. I mean, it does drive me nuts when people come here and they have to have a translator to speak for them. Like, okay, if you're going to come to a country that speaks a language, you should know some basics. Like, if I was moved to France, I would learn basic French
Yeah.
and stuff like that. But to assume someone doesn't speak it just because they don't look like they come from the country, well, that's
Yeah.
not a very good assumption. I mean,
Yeah.
and but it's very common. It happens way too often. And as Christians, we have to very carefully guard ourselves to make
Hmm.
sure we're not falling into that trap because Jesus didn't care about color. He didn't care about any of that stuff. It's just like you're a child of God.
Hmm.
Follow me. That was what he cared about. It didn't matter whether you're even a prostitute or a murderer as on the cross, but he preached to everyone and said, "You can
Yeah.
all have forgiveness and repent, and just repent and come
Hmm.
to me." And I love the word you use, crossroads, as well, because the cross is shaped like a crossroad. And so to me, meeting that cross is a crossroad, and you can see it just in that shape. Are you going to follow Christ
Hmm.
or are you not going to follow Christ? And I mean, it's like there's three ways. There's a way where you can completely commit to following Christ, and then there's the people who are kind of like, I'll follow some parts that I
Hmm.
want to follow, and there's people that are just like, I'm not going to follow it all. I don't believe it all.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting when you use the word crossroads because to me the cross is that crossroad, and it's shaped like it. So it's a clear message as to what that is, and Jesus is the bridge that gets us to heaven. So I thought that was very interesting. I would like to hear a little bit about your testimony. I'm just going to read Matthew 7, 13 to 14 here. And
Hmm.
that says, enter by the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the way is easy that leads to destruction. And those who enter by it are many. For the gate is narrow and the way is hard that leads to life. And those who find it are few. And I think that speaks very well to your testimony and your battle with cancer. So, could you just explain a little bit about your testimony, how you came to know Christ, and what God's been doing in your life since you came to know Christ?
When I reached that crossroad, I was already feeling a little lost within, navigating this Hollywood life. And the pivotal point, that crossroad that I mentioned, was I had been dating a girl for about a year and a half. And I discovered that, I discovered that this isn't for me, this relationship. And it was strange that I was being told that. I had that feeling. And so what happened was I found out that one day she told me, she's like, "Hey, you're a friend of yours is messaging me." And I told him, why don't you just ask Andrew if you have questions? Why are you contacting me? And so anyways, I found out later that um they had gotten together behind my back while I was still with her.
Mm.
And I realized in that moment, I said, it was strange. It was very strange that in that moment I had been kind of very kind of lukewarm, in my faith. And but in that moment, I I had a decision to make. It just became black and white. I said I can either get very angry, and I can just basically like throw a tantrum and just say all these things, or seek revenge, or I can look towards my faith. I can look towards God, and I can be like, I need to know more. I need to dive into it and I need to fully focus. I don't need to spend all this effort and time trying to, get revenge and be, like, very, yeah, very vengeful. It's like that doesn't make sense. So I made that decision and I called a friend. I said, "Can we talk?" So I called a friend and we ended up at IHOP and he was like, "What's going on?" And I told him all these things. And I said, "This is how I'm feeling. I feel quite upset, but I just want to let you know that please do not tell me anything that happens. I like regarding that. I don't need a distraction because I want to go on the way of I want to build my faith." And so I did. And this happened about 7 years ago. Yeah, about 6 to 7 years ago. And that point on, just little by little, I was born and raised a Catholic. And then so I knew things a certain way, but that path didn't resonate with me. I felt like I was always going to church for, my parents wanted me to and things like that. So in that moment that happened, I said, I need to know more. And there's things that going to church, my parents, I just didn't get answers. I didn't feel the spirit within me. So I started venturing on my own and looking up different churches to go to. And I started listening to different pastors on YouTube and just really trying to get a grasp on, I was really searching. I felt so empty. And I was like, I don't want to feel this hole that I feel is within me with anger, and just being sad all the time. I want to feel it. I want to fill it with something that, with I want to feel like I want to feel peace. I want to feel love. And so I just bounced around through all these different pastors and these podcasts and things like that. And it was within that first week, I just started receiving things, just clarity and wisdom and support that I had never felt before. And that was the start of my true journey. And so little by little, not it wasn't just, like a wave rushed at one time. I started getting more and more curious. And it led me to, where I am today. I'm at a church that, I love. I'm in a Bible study group where I meet, 4 hours on the weekends and just doing a really deep dive. But I guess I want to also tie into, I guess, the meat and potatoes of my testimonial. So after that had occurred, a few years later, I would say about 2.5, 3 years later, I was still on my journey. Um, I had bumped into a friend who I met years prior. On a job I did in entertainment, and I remember him. We connected, and then after we connected, we just kind of caught up and everything like that, and then we started dating. And while I was dating her, uh it was went on for like a couple of years, and then I got hurt while playing basketball. And when I got hurt playing basketball, I went to the ER to have get X-rays done and all that. And and so I decided to take some time off work to heal because I was like, my body can't take this, and I just got to rest. So I went home and to heal and things like that. And then during this time, I was expressing things to her about, like, my new discovery on my faith and the things I was experiencing. And she wasn't a believer. Her family went through some things. She lost her dad, and she said that God turned his back on me, so I'm going to turn my back on him. And I said, that's not, no, you don't need to do that. That's not how this works. It's like, no matter what, you turn your back on him, he's always going to come after you. He'll never turn his back on you. And so I tried to share that, but some people, you can lead them to water, but you can't get them to drink.
Yeah.
And so it took me a while to understand that.
Thank you for listening to Cool Explorations. You've just been listening to Andrew Williams, a brain cancer survivor, talk about his battle with cancer, what the battle was like, and about his surviving, and how God has really worked through his life to create a miracle in his heart as well as a miracle in his body. And he wants to leave us off with a piece of advice for those who are battling with seemingly insurmountable health issues. He's got some really important advice that he's just left us with. I hope that you've enjoyed part 1 of this conversation with Andrew Williams and that you'll tune in tomorrow to hear part 2. If you would like to reach me for any reason, you can do so at tpeters745@gmail.com.